This is Moving Soulward, the podcast about growing a business at the intersection of strategy, spirituality, and self-care. We're your hosts, Katie McLaughlin, your Be Good guide, and
Maria Spiralis, the lunar lawyer. We love a good inspirational story, but we're not interested in just profits or bottom lines. Though don't get us wrong, those things are important.
in Moving Soulward, expect to hear conversations with entrepreneurs who are at all different stages of building a business, with two important things in common. Success means something different to each of them, and you don't have to sell your soul to get what you want.
Prioritizing stillness, systems, energies, and service are all valuable and necessary parts of mindful entrepreneurship. Now grab your favorite card deck, a warm mug, spark up a candle, and listen in. Welcome back to the Moving Soulward podcast. Today we are speaking with Kayce Laine. Kayce is a lifelong musician who got her diploma in integral sound healing with crystal bowls with the Sound Healing Academy in 2021. Upon earning this diploma, she quit her job in PR to pursue a business in sound healing full-time.
Since then, she's gone from making $1,500 in her first month to now having consistent 15 to 30K months, all while learning a lot about running a business and maintaining an unwavering spiritual practice. Welcome to another episode. We've got Kayce Laine here. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing wonderfully. How are you guys?
So good.
Doing so great. Excited to have you here.
So excited to be here. I'm really happy we're all finally connecting.
Well, Kayce, we would love for you to just kind of introduce yourself and give the listeners a description of what you do. And if you had to, how do you categorize what you do? Is it self-care? Is it healing? Is it self-discovery? Tell us about the work that you do.
Yeah, so I am a musician first. That's my number one, my first original title, if you will. And I do sound healing full time here in Nashville and kind of in the southeast of the US. I run workshops and trainings and teach people how to work with crystal bowls specifically. That's my passion. And most recently, I've been kind of trying to focus my work on education around music theory and sound healing and how those two worlds should be really connected and oftentimes are not, which I think really does the whole practice a disservice, specifically again with the crystal singing bowls, because they are so westernized, they are so musical, that having a musical background when you're working with them is really important. And a lot of people kind of skip over that step. So that's mostly what I do. I also sell crystal singing bowls and obviously work with people with sound in different capacities, whether that's in one-to-one sessions or with group stuff, private and public events. And yeah, I kind of have my hands in a lot of different baskets, I guess that's the say, and under the umbrella of sound.
I have my bachelor's in music. So when you said music theory, I am so interested. We can geek out over that maybe later, but that is fascinating.
Yes, yeah, I just put a course out last month and it's music theory for sound healers, just to kind of like help people wrap their brains around some of the musical concepts that, I as a musician, it came really naturally to me, obviously, as I went through the training. But I would say probably 90% of the people who do trainings for sound healing with me are not musicians at all, have no musical background. They're people that, are into other healing arts such as Katie, And so there definitely has been this gap there that I'm, trying to fill.
Yeah, I think that one of the really amazing things is I took Kayce's level 1 sound healing and it was incredible. And I think that one of the things that's really interesting about what I wasn't necessarily expecting when I took it was not only the music theory background, but all the science that you bring to it as well. So there's like science, sound, music theory, and it all comes together. And I think that a lot of people maybe are like, a sound bath, does that involve water? Like, I've been asked that before. I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I've literally been called water girl. There's so many things. Or if you're like, do I need a bathing suit? I'm like, no. They're like, where's the water? Where's the bath?
Yeah, so maybe you could back up and maybe just do a description of what is a sound bath, what is sound healing, what is it that you do? Like, you've got crystal bowls, you're teaching courses, but what is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to explain sound healing by looking at our relationship to our sense of hearing and our nervous system. And if you think about the fact, like our ears are our sense that are basically our ears are constantly sensing for a threat in our environment from when we're still a fetus in our mother's womb to our last breaths. And it happens while we're sleeping. It's this constant, basically, alertness of our ears to sense a threat. So that threat and that connection is deeply immersed with our nervous system and our response to a threat, right? So we spend a lot of our days, we don't know that we're sensing for a threat, but we wake up to an alarm and that sound jolts our nervous system into action. And then we have these more subtle sound interactions throughout the day, even like our phones going off, email notifications, someone honking their horn on the road. We have these constant bombardments of sound in our nervous system all day that kind of give us these little shots of cortisol all the time. So, what we want to do with a sound healing practice is create an environment for people to feel really safe and comfortable, but then work with sounds that are kind of doing the opposite and getting our body out of that fight or flight and into the rest and digest nervous system response with these really calming, kind of all encompassing instruments that just really are designed to relax the nervous system. So that's one way to look at it. There's also, we can get into brainwave entrainment where, we're literally getting our brain waves to synchronize to different frequencies, which is really cool. And then, when you go to a sound bath, that's essentially what you're getting yourself into. I like to call it a sound meditation because you're not looking at anything else. You're really checked out. You're committing to, an hour or so of disconnection to other stimuli, giving your brain a chance to relax, really letting your brain kind of go where it needs to go, and hopefully really relax you so you can essentially heal yourself, right? I try not to put sound healer as much. It's obviously the name of what I do, it's what people recognize, but I'll try to say sound practitioner as much as possible just because I don't like to embody a healer, right? I'm not healing people, people are healing themselves. And all I'm really doing is creating a space for people, again, to feel safe, to feel comfortable, and allow their bodies to heal itself.
It's so amazing. I mean, I like to think of a sound bath as that was like my gateway to meditation because I still to this day cannot sit and like silent meditate. Like I'll like journal. I need some sort of tool, and sound my first sound bath was so powerful in like dropping into that meditative state so easily. I found out I'm very sensitive to sound. So I think just like what maybe to give a little bit more about what people like can expect to feel, or there's physical, like some people have physical reactions, visual reactions when they're experiencing sound healing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a ton of different responses people have, and it also depends on the day for them and what they're going through and how easily they're able to drop in, because sometimes people are just going to stay at a certain brainwave state. It's going to be harder and harder for certain people to get, really drop down. But there's a lot of different things people can expect. For one, relaxation, that's almost a guarantee. Number two, you may feel your body like twitching, and that only really happens when your body is relaxing. So that's a really great sign that you're relaxed and that your body is kind of releasing energy physically. Then often, at least what happens to me, and I hear it all the time, is because you're shifting into that rest and digest, your stomach, you'll start to hear your digestive system. So people's stomach will gurgle, they'll make all types of sounds because they're relaxing, right? Their body's, ooh, I can like digest and rest now, right? So that's another thing physically that will happen. And it's also a really great sign that you're right where you need to be. Other things that are things that I don't necessarily ever want to promise or guarantee, like I said, but do happen, is pain relief. I've had a lot of people who, for whatever reason, the bowls, the setting, whatever's going on with them, like really bad arthritis will kind of like numb. People will have emotional releases where, you know, maybe they're not maybe they're not allowing themselves to feel certain emotions they're just kind of repressing and suppressing different emotions that, you know, all of this stuff will kind of shake those things to the surface. So that can look like crying or laughing or even frustration and stress and all of those things. So I always try to, you know, tell people before a sound bath, you know, it may not be all rainbows and butterflies the whole time. You may have a really hard time relaxing. You may have a story in your mind where you're beating yourself up for not relaxing. You're like, I paid for this meditation and I'm not meditating. I'm thinking about these things, you know? And that's really not a good way to, a good path to go down with that. You really want to let those emotions come up and move through because, like I said, they're probably emotions that you've been pushing down that need to come up so you can move beyond them. So, yeah, there's all types of stuff. The list goes on, but that's kind of, oh, and then people will fall asleep too, obviously. So,
Yeah.
so I'll interrogate myself bath. I'll be like, rule number one is be comfortable. So, like, whatever you need to do to be comfortable. Rule number two is if the person next to you snores, please wake them up. Because that does happen. And sometimes it's like cute little snores and everyone's, oh, that's nice. They're relaxed. And then sometimes it's disruptive.
It's so good to hear that like range of expectations and outcomes because people just, even I went to this energetic parenting workshop on human design and parenting. And it was like kind of an emotional session. And at the end, there was a short sound bath at the end. And I was like, okay, I can't wait to relax and close my eyes. And I cried the entire 15, 20-minute sound bath. I was like, well, that was not what I was expecting, but it's probably what needed to happen, right?
Totally. Yeah. And another thing that I find for me personally when I experience a sound bath, I'll notice that certain muscles in my body are tense. All of a sudden I'll realize that I'm like clenching my fist or like my hip or my glute is flexed. And I'm like, whoa, why am I holding this tension here? So it can create an experience or an environment for you to kind of explore your body and where you may hold tension subconsciously and kind of like, you know, relax into those things. So yeah, it, there's a lot of things that can happen. I mean, people go on psychedelic journeys. They'll come back and be like, "Oh my gosh, I just saw God." You know? So there's all types of things that can happen. And again, it just kind of depends on how comfortable people are because, you know, just like with any other healing modality, you know, safety is the primary ingredient for that. And so really establishing a sense of safety for your people, whether that's in a private session or in a group, you know, you just want to make sure they feel safe with you as a practitioner. And that's why I feel like education behind this modality is so important because it's a responsibility you have. You're working with people in a really vulnerable position and you can actually harm their nervous system, you know, like I just talked about how tight our nervous system is with sound. And if you don't really know what you're doing, you can be playing too loud, which can literally cause hearing damage. You can be playing a bunch of dissonance without realizing it, no, not realizing that that is going to be stirring up emotions for people and not necessarily relaxing them in the same way. And dissonance is fine. We love it. We work with it, but just having a really intentional awareness of when you're bringing that into a session is super important. And yeah, don't get me started. I could go on all day, but it's just, would you go take a class with a yoga teacher who never went through any training? Probably not. You know, would you go to it be, you know, any type of other modality in this kind of world without that person being trained? And you know, theoretically the answer would probably be no. And this is just like all of those things. It's something to, it's very sacred. And like I said, it's a responsibility for practitioners to, you know what you're doing before you bring people in and try to get them moving energy around, and who knows what else could happen, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you bring up especially dissonance, and I've heard you talk about this before, so I'd love to look at this a little bit as far as environment and like who you're connecting with and who you're creating that space for. So obviously dissonance can bring up, can unlodge things or unlock things. So is that something that you stay away from when, say, you're doing like a monthly sound bath at Soho House, or you're playing for the TikTok headquarters where maybe it's not like trying to dislodge. I would imagine that that's more of a one-on-one scenario. So talk a little bit about like the different environments that you operate in, and then how you approach those based on like that knowledge of what your intention is.
Really quickly, I wanted to hop in here and tell you something that you probably already know if you're listening to this podcast, but just in case you don't, Katie and I are hosting the first annual Soulward Summit Conference. This is a business conference for mindful leaders, for mindful achievers, for business owners who know that they should listen to their intuition, who know they shouldn't get stuck in hustle culture mode, but sometimes they do, and you want to really incorporate your intrinsic gifts, your own authenticity into your business and your brand and take it to the next iteration of your dream. And so if you're interested, head to soulwardsummit.com and you'll get all of the details there on tickets and ticket options. We hope to see you there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I've ever done a sound bath with, actually, there's only one time I did a sound bath for a private for two people that I did not use any dissonance. And any other session I will. And part of that is the contrast of it, right? And dissonance, at least when I do it, at least to me, it can still sound cool. And I almost want to like demo.
Please demo it.
Just so you can kind of feel what I mean by it, because again, it's not a bad thing per se. It's just going to give people a different feeling in their body. So I will play. I wasn't necessarily prepared for this. So this is a C sharp and a D sharp. So they are just one step away from each other. So they create a dissonance, and it creates this little like purr almost of the frequencies, which some people find to be really relaxing. And I'm not off put by that. And this is one of the types of dissonances that I do use in pretty much every sound bath, because it does create that contrast. Versus that, which is this is harmony, right? So you hear that tension, and then there's this release back into harmony. And part of that process is actually really beneficial to a sound bath regardless. So I wouldn't say don't use dissonance. I would say be strategic about what kind of dissonance. When you use lower frequencies that are a little bit, I don't have all my bowls in front of me, but there's certain dissonance that is a little more jarring that I would not use in every situation, because it's way less pleasant. And I'm also someone, I just want my sound baths to mostly just be pretty because that's just what I want them to sound like. And the one time that I did not use dissonance was with a family who had just lost a family member like a week prior in a very terrible way. And they weren't coming to me for healing, right? They were coming to me to calm their nervous system and get them into rest and digest, because they were in such a heightened trauma state. So it was me needing to step into my responsibility as a practitioner and recognize, okay, these people are dealing with this. I need to make this entire sound bath only harmony, only really relaxing. I don't want to stir things up for these people. I honestly wouldn't have, I tried to not do the session with them because I felt like they weren't ready necessarily for that. But once we framed it that way, okay, this is just an opportunity to calm your nervous system. We're not trying to stir things up. And to your point too, a lot of times with more corporate types of things, yeah, people are not going to feel comfortable releasing emotion when they're surrounded by coworkers. So very often those sound baths, I'll make them a little shorter for one, but yeah, I don't try to do a ton of like tension and release, right? I make those a little more kind of surface level, if you will, just to kind of calm people down, let them feel relaxed, get a little moment of reprieve in the middle of the day, and then they're in their office a lot of the time. Same with TikTok, even though those are mostly virtual that I do with them, those are really short. Virtuals are usually always a bit shorter just because if people are in their home, like they're not gonna sit there for an hour and relax. Like it's just not gonna happen. So yeah, just kind of knowing your audience, catering to them for sure, but also not demonizing dissonance. It's not a bad thing. It's just it's again, it's that contrast that you can bring in. It can be really nice to feel that dissonance because it makes the harmony feel that much more, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that makes so much sense that you're depending on the session, depending on how many people it is, whether it's individual, group, what is the environment, virtual or in person, like in a home or in a private setting, or in person, but in like a group public setting. These are all things that you're taking into consideration. And then looking at what the intention and the goal is of that session around is this meant for just relaxation? Is this healing? Is it what are we trying to create? To me, it almost is designing out like an orchestra or something where you're like, okay, what journey am I going to take these people on, and depending on where they are, and how can I, musically do that? So that, I mean, that, or even playing a show or something, like you're figuring out like what is your set list in order to create the
Instrumentation.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and instrumentation is a big part of that. Obviously, crystal bowls is my jam, but the gong is super releasing. That's really intense for people. It often will stress people out and make them anxious or angry even. And then there's the chimes that are just like everyone feels like those are like little fairies like playing around them, and really recognizing what other instruments are going to do what. Like an ocean drum is also really kind of a releasing thing. It feels like it's like washing energy away from people. And so yes, it is relaxing for people, but also it does like really shake things up in a way. So exactly, really crafting intentionally your symphony, your orchestra, like you said. I love that analogy.
I personally love the ocean drum. I see waves of colors when I hear it. So love that. I feel like
that'll be their favorite part is the ocean drum. And I'll be like, you like my $50 ocean drum and not my like $1,000 bowl? Like
I
but don't you like
bought
the
an
bowl
ocean
too?
drum and I play it for friends. It's their favorite. It's not the bowls.
Right. I know. Or the chives that get $60. I'm like, yeah. But yeah, people love those things. And so I definitely encourage people who, obviously, if you have a sound healing practice, yes, the bowls are great, but having those other instruments that you can add in there is also really important.
Do you use your voice?
Funny you should ask. Yes, I do. Now I do. It took me a long time and I'm still honestly working on it, because I always kind of kept my songwriter, music, pop stuff as a separate world, and then my sound healing as this other thing. And it's weird how difficult it has been to bring my voice into a setting where there's no rules, there's no words, there's no right note, wrong note. This is the melody you sing, this is how you sing it. It's been way harder than I ever would have imagined to lean into that, because it sounds like, oh, it's so much easier. You don't have to remember words or notes. And it's really hard to lean into that freedom. It's a totally different way of looking at your voice. And it's really vulnerable in a new way too, because you can't hide behind the words. And, the melodies, like the improvisation side of it is like scary. So yeah, it's been something that I've really been working on really just in the past year, which is kind of crazy because I've been doing sound for, oh my gosh, almost 4 years full time now. And really just in the past year, I was like, okay, I really need to use my voice and not be afraid to step into that. And it's just been a lot of work, and I still get really nervous when I go to use it. And now I'm about to do this symphony gig in a month, and I have a lot of fear around using my voice in that way because, again, I have to lean into that freedom and trust myself in a totally new way. And so, yeah. So, long answer short, yes, I do use my voice, but I haven't always.
I can totally understand that. Okay, this is all improvisation, and what comes out is not what I wanted to come out, or it doesn't actually sound as great as it did in my head. So props to you, because I'm sure that
Yeah.
takes a lot of practice and muscle toning, I guess.
It does, yeah, and I'm someone who, and I've realized as soon as I started talking here, I didn't warm up my voice today. And usually before I speak and on a platform, especially for other people, I like to warm my voice up because it changes the way I speak. It changes that little grit in my voice because I do kind of like sink down into a low register, and it takes me it like elevates my voice a little bit even when I'm speaking. So yeah, I'm 100% someone who like has to warm their voice up, and that is a huge part of my practice. And I also didn't do my mantra this morning, which does kind of warm me up anyway. We'll blame the cats for that one.
Well, speaking of mantra and habits, are you ready for a couple of lightning round questions?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, first one is an easy one. What is your favorite warm beverage right now?
Right now, coffee. I'm back on the coffee train. I have a love-hate relationship with coffee. I'm currently in a coffee phase. So there's just nothing like it to me.
Purist.
There's a latte.
Mm-hmm. Hard to beat. What is your current Netflix or podcast binge?
You guys, now you're really gonna expose me because I'm I'm watching The Ultimatum, the new season of The Ultimatum. I really horrible reality TV, like the 90 Day Fiancés. I watched Married at First Sight. I ended up getting to be on that show with my sound. It was like huge for me. I'm sure most people don't even know it. I've watched every season of Married at First Sight.
I love Married at First
My guilty
Sight, and when I saw that you were, I like geeked out. I was like, I know her. Like, I'm
Yeah.
with you. I'm with you
all
on the
about
Married at
bad
First
reality
Sight.
shows. Yeah.
A friend of mine was approached to be on Married at First Sight, and I was like, you have to do it. And she's like, absolutely not.
It's one of those shows like you really gotta be ready for that kind of thing. That takes a certain kind of person.
Yeah.
I mean, their success rate isn't that high, but but it's fascinating to watch.
Totally, yeah. It's the train wrecks. You just can't take your eyes off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What is the last book you read that you couldn't put down?
I'm reading one right now that I can't put down called The Power of Sound, which sounds really vague and basic, but it's by this guy Joshua Leeds, who's a musician and works with sound. And I can't believe I can't believe I never read it until now because it's so good. He really explains things in the way that I do. And anyway, yeah. I don't know how long you want me to explain these things, but this book is amazing, especially if you're into sound. I would definitely recommend it.
Cool.
I just bought it
What?
for my dad for his birthday yesterday.
Oh, nice. Is your dad a musician also?
He is, yeah.
Pretty cool.
And I like bought a bunch of bowls and left them at my parents' house in Virginia. And so he's been kind of like playing with them, and I gave him access to my music theory course, so he's been kind of watching that, and I'm like, okay, maybe this is like his last chapter, new passion. We'll see.
What is your favorite self-care or spiritual hygiene ritual?
I would have to say my TM practice. I do transcendental meditation, and that's something I've been practicing for probably 6 years now. And that's something I do not skip, no matter whether I'm traveling, anything I'm doing. I've missed like maybe under 10 days in the past 6 years of TM. And it's usually because I have like an early flight or something where I like don't have that extra 20 minutes in the morning. So yeah, that's probably my biggest thing.
I was going to ask if there's something that's particularly conducive to being on the go, but it sounds like that is Quite.
Yeah, because and it's also a form of sound meditation. It's repeating a mantra that you're given when you go through the process of TM. And you are given a mantra that you repeat over in your head. So that's like this repetition, this pattern of syllables that brings you away from your monkey mind and kind of allows you to go deeper, because you'll kind of like be in this blissed out state and you're like, oh, mantra, and it's also really forgiving. It's not like a Buddhist meditation where you can't scratch your nose if you itch, or like some of these really like just limiting practices.
Rigid.
It's really just be comfortable. Don't go out into the woods and like meditate, because you're not actually gonna be comfortable. It like sounds nice, but like you need to be just in your comfortable space and go hang out at the woods or the beach and not be trying to meditate during it. Like just do it somewhere practical where you can get it done, and it is what it is.
Yeah. How do you get most of your clients or your opportunities, your work opportunities?
It depends on what things we're talking, because again, I have all these different offerings. So my students come probably equally from the Sound Healing Academy, who I train people through. They market a lot of their stuff. So a lot of people that come through them, I wouldn't necessarily have without them. And then obviously just kind of word of mouth. I share things at the end of Sound Baths that I do publicly. I will say I've gotten some good corporate clients because of my residency at Soho House. So it's been a really cool just marketing thing for me. And so yeah, that's probably where I get a lot of different one-to-one and group stuff. And then also for whatever reason, I've made my Google business is pretty easy to find, and I have probably maybe the most reviews on there, and that's because I incentivize people to leave reviews, because I think it's really important. So I would say probably over half of the people that come to me for one-to-one sessions just Googled Sound Healing Nashville and found me and just booked me, and they're totally random, have never done it before, just booked it online when they saw it. So that's kind of cool. That's been really helpful.
That's very cool and interesting. That's a mix of kind of in-person experience and SEO and marketing through the trainings that you do. That's a really good balance.
Yeah, and I think it's important for business owners to be thinking about all of those things, like you can't rely on just one thing. You can't just rely on your Instagram, or you can't just rely on word of mouth, or the people are going to come to me that need me. I feel like at least part of my success in this world has been because I am so proactive about all the different ways that I try to reach people, whether that's trying to do press and doing the PR stuff, or just really reaching out and pitching myself to companies I want to work with, to different people that I want to collaborate with. And it's really important to remember that, yes, you can be like totally in your feminine with your business, and like maybe that will work for you. If you don't rely on it to pay the bills, like maybe it's fine, But if you're trying to really go for it and make the money and do the thing, it really is important to pitch yourself and be really proactive and be in that masculine. My business side of thing is very in my masculine, for better or for worse. So
I think that's so many of us. And I think, I speak for Katie and I both, where we're all about a balance of energies in business, right?
mhm. Yeah, I'm really in my feminine in the mornings, and then the rest of the day I'm like, okay, let's go.
So what is one thing you wish you knew before you started this business?
Hmm. I think I would just like to know that it can work. I think, and I even talked to my dad about this, because him as an entrepreneur, a musician, feeling like there's no way. I felt like when I first started that I had to choose between, I had this cushy job in PR and made the leap and quit, and had basically not much going on. literally made $1,500 my first month. And I was like, yes, you know?
Mhm.
And I really thought at the time that I would basically always be poor because I was doing something that I was passionate about. And I really was attached to this story that, like, either you have the security of a job, an employer, or you're on your own and you're struggling, you know? So I think, and not that I don't still struggle and have my own like challenges that I have, even when I'm having really successful months, you know, the challenges are always there, but I would like to have told myself, actually, you can do both, you know, you can have the freedom of working for yourself and also be financially secure. Because again, I really thought that that wasn't possible for me, you know, at least.
Is there something that stands out to you as some of the best life advice that you've received?
Hmm. I feel like I've gotten so much good advice. I talk to my dad a lot. I've obviously mentioned him a lot in this podcast. Somehow he always comes into my things. He and I are really close, and we're also really similar. Like I definitely am his child, you know. I've got his DNA running through me, the good and the bad, you know. And so he and I have a really good relationship around work, and I don't know that I can think of like a specific like word of wisdom over the years, but just like having a consistent person that I can have conversations with about money and about, you know, investing and certain things like that, that, you know, obviously you can hire a financial advisor, but I feel really lucky that I at least and I'm not like some big I literally have whatever stocks he told me to get 10 years ago and never looked back. But, you know, buying my house and certain things like that where I just feel like I'm so lucky to have someone who actually I know has my best interest in mind that I can like lean on and talk to about things, especially around money. I think that's kind of the hardest thing to talk about so much for people. I think it comes down to you can't do it alone. And I will say, just in this past year, I've actually invested in support for the first time with a mentor, with a virtual assistant, like kind of like an OBM kind of situation where she's helped me build my course. And I kind of look at her as like my business coach too. And having that support, and also I hired someone to help me with the launch of the course, you know, just actually investing in support, I think has been really helpful for me. And I had a hard time justifying that for a long time, being like, well, no, I can do it myself, you know, and realizing, no, it's so much better if I can just have someone who, like, that's what they do. They can do it in 10 minutes and it'll take me a day, you know, and really not being afraid to invest in that support, even if, you know, you don't have the dad that you can call at the drop of a hat, like having someone that you can talk to about all the different parts of your business is like so important. You know, I have a lawyer sister, so helpful. You know, it's like you got to have those people you can call. Yeah, we can't be expected to know all the things. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like this misconception where if you choose to become an entrepreneur that you have to be like the CEO, the CMO, the COO, the CFO, the you whatever acronyms, you have to be them all. And while there is a bit of truth to that, especially in the beginning when you're figuring out what your direction and your vision, there's that doesn't mean that you have to be an expert at all of those things all the time, all at once, right? I am not going to go get a law degree. Okay. I work with Maria. I'm not going to become a certified accountant. I work with Megan. You find these, and it feels really easy, like in the traditional business sense. I'm not a lawyer. I need a lawyer. But I think it's so powerful when you can start to pick apart the things that you're doing. I want to launch a course to help sound healers. What pieces of that are not in my zone of genius and what are? What pieces of that light me up to do and what do not? What pieces,
Totally.
and for
Yeah.
you, like what leans on your PR background and your music background, like you can activate those different sides of yourself and the different journey you've had. But then where are the pieces that you don't want to do that?
Yeah, because those things that you don't want to do can ultimately block you from doing the thing. And that was part of the thing with the course. I had this idea, I really wanted to do it, but I was like, what do like, how do I even begin this, you know? And at the time, I had a mentor who had this like template of here's your course creation outline, start there. And then it was like, oh, and then she introduced me to now the woman that I work with who helped me build out the whole thing because that was such a mountain for me that I was like, I have no idea how to put content in a thing and create the cart and no idea. And I almost didn't do it because I didn't know how to do it all, you know? And so really like surrendering the process to let this person help me. And now I like don't know what I would do without her. So it's important to have that.
I think the other thing with that too is like this is also like hashtag entrepreneur life, is like you knew that this thing like needed to exist, right? Like you had this feeling, there's always this feeling of not just like this is a good idea and people would like it, but it's like this inner urge it's a creative urge, right? This needs to exist. Does that for you in sound healing translate to like what it would be like to put out an album as a musician? Like are they similar? Does that look the
Oh my
same to you?
gosh. Yes, it felt really similar. It was funny because I think I even like made a post about or it was probably just a story, but I spoke about it because launching the course felt so much like putting a record out because it was this really vulnerable thing. And even though I'd been teaching for a couple years and talking about this stuff all the time, it was a totally new medium. It was a totally new way of people viewing me. You know, I did it all here in my room. I filmed it all myself. I edited it all myself. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I hope people like it." You know, I think it looked pretty good and had all the things, but, you know, it was this thing where it's like, "Oh my gosh, and then I hope people buy it," you know? And it was a really similar feeling to putting an album out where you spend all this time creating this thing, and then you put it out into the world and you're just like, "Okay, I guess I've done all I can do. I just have to sit back and hope that it finds the right people." And obviously, you have to be proactive about the marketing and the launch strategy and all that stuff, which I honestly didn't do as much with my music stuff because just candidly, you don't really make much in music. I probably made in the past year as much as I make from one person buying the course, you know? So it's different in that way. There's a different type of reward, but it's a very similar feeling of this vulnerable creation that people are now gonna see, and hopefully they like it, you know?
Can you
Yeah.
say, because I think this is something that a lot of business owners, when they get to a certain point of their business, when they're like, okay, I know I can't do everything forever because I just can't. But there's also that thought of like, okay, I have to take a leap and invest and hope that my thing is going to pay me back, I guess is the way that I'm thinking about it.
Mhm.
But what your strategy or what your kind of process was when you were like, okay, I'm going to hire someone. Did you wait to hire until you had kind of amassed a certain amount and you knew you could invest in that person? Or was it kind of all right, we're going to invest in this and see how this project goes. And if it goes the way that I want it to go, then maybe we'll do something additional.
The first one for me. And part of that, like, I can be pretty frugal and a little like, this is even though I had a good month this month, like, I don't know about next month. And, you know, so I did wait until I felt like, okay, and part of the course creation outline that I did was like break down like the overhead. Like how much is it going to cost to actually make this? You know, you got to pay the subscription for the platform, you got to pay the subscription for the MailChimp so you can have the funnels for all the emails. Like again, not what I do. You got to, you know, I had to buy a couple of software things to make it look and sound good. And other than that, I was like, you know, it's only going to be maybe about 2,000 to $2,500 that I'm investing in this. And like, how many people have to buy the course in order for me to break even? And so that's kind of, I had to kind of like break the numbers down for me, at least for this specific thing. Less so about a mentor that like, yeah, you're not necessarily going to see an ROI in the same way because you're investing in a confidant, you're investing in strategy, you're investing in someone who can inspire you, and you can, honestly, to me it was almost like therapist for a while. And I wish I could afford to have her all the time. She's amazing. I'm I'm actually on the hunt for another mentor type person for 2025 just because I saw so much value in that. And I really do, I offer mentorship for other people, and working with a mentor made me a better mentor. So that was another return on investment for me, was like, after working with her, I am that much more capable of working with other clients as well. And maybe I'm not going to ever charge as much as she does. I I still feel more confident in offering that service to people as well. So yeah, so it's hard. If it's still hard for me, it's still hard for me to drop money. I will say it's very easy for me to drop a lot of money on crystal bowls. For some reason, it's like that money does not exist. I'm like working on an order right now. I'm like, I literally don't need any bowls. I need zero. And here I am about to drop a couple grand on them. So it's all perspective. And the last thing I'll say on that is I just met with my assistant slash business OBM. What does it stand for? Online business manager, last week. And we had a half VIP day. And I will say, it's only a few $100s, but that money also doesn't feel like hard for me to spend. Once we get into like many thousands, that's when I'm like, But there's something really kind of fun, and that's what I did realize this year once I did invest. Like, there's something fun about spending that money, and it sounds weird to say that out loud, honestly, but it's almost, it feels like I'm investing in myself because I am. So it's almost like I'm just moving the money here. It's like you buy the house and like you do spend the money, but you have the house, right? Like you're kind of just moving the money into this other thing. So that's at least how I've kind of framed it for some of, at least the smaller stuff. It's easy for me to spend on. And I think too, once you start doing it, you feel that and you're like, okay, you feel a little less attached to it feels less like I'm spending this money as if you're like buying a shirt. You're investing in yourself, and that is a different feeling. It's a different energetic exchange for sure.
I was just going to say energetic exchange. That's just what kept popping up. And I think that there's a common thread when people are first starting out in something, that it feels easier to spend money on tools, tangible things like
the courses.
Yeah, things that are going to to me, it's all this like either you need a tool to actually physically do what you're trying to do. So there's that. But then there's this layer of everything else that's almost like a search for legitimizing whatever you're doing. So whether that's like a certificate or whether that's like a system or whether that's, okay, well now I've got really like polished emails with Flowdesk. Like there's this layer of trying to legitimize it. And then at some point, and I don't know what the pivot is, I think it's kind of a slow pivot, but there starts to be this shift into where you can spend money to, like you said, invest back in your business. And it's legitimizing. It feels legitimizing. It feels, okay, I'm making an actual company. Like the feeling is there, but it's not as outward of a like, it looks like I'm creating a company. It's more of an internal energetic exchange of I'm investing in myself. I trust myself. I know that I'm going to build this business how I want to build it. And these are the things that I need. And so I think that there's like, yeah, that interesting shift. And I don't have like a pinpoint, but it sounds like you're sort of in that shift right now, right? Looking while you're still like, yes, I want all these sick crystal bowls. Like that never goes away, to be like optimizing your tools and your systems, but you're like, what can I do to think of this as like a lasting, this isn't just an experiment anymore. This is my career path.
Yeah. And I think there's also, once you start investing in a team, if you will, it's not just the like support you get from them, but it also is like a community. And I hired this mentor who referred me to this person and gave me this student. And like when I have mentees, I give them the gigs that I can't do. And there's this exchange there as well, where you kind of like, you look out for each other, you refer people to each other, and it becomes this really cool symbiotic relationship too. So I really do love that.
So good. So has that been sort of your biggest challenge in business in this past year, or is there something else? What stands out looking back at this past year as being a hurdle? Was it launching a course? Was it building a team? Is there something else? What would you say?
Launching the course was a big one. It was honestly because I had these blocks of I've never done this before. This is all new. And I also have a tendency to pack my schedule and not have time to do the things that aren't making me money in the moment, that I really had to be super strict with myself and literally block off my calendar and put film course for the entire day for like many days. It was like over a course of a month and a half probably that I was working on the filming part of it, which I mean it took forever. I had to write the script, I'd get all set up, I'd like do my makeup. It was like, you know, what Tim my husband and I actually just mentioned this yesterday to a friend too, which maybe comes back to some advice, is no one gives a shit about how you got from point A to point B. They just care about point B. And the getting to point B on the course was like all new. It was all like I'm guessing. And so yes, I had a lot of challenges there, especially like I said, with just making it happen. Because like I said, I wasn't making money from it in that moment. And blocking off my schedule can sometimes be really hard for me because it's like the potential of someone to book me for that day or whatever. So I really had to be strict with myself on that. So that was probably one of the hardest parts of that whole process. I think too, having some really cool stuff happen is really cool, right? It's been a really awesome year for my business. And it's created this new challenge of sustaining that, which that is harder for me to kind of work through those really like cool, amazing months where I like have these great money months where I do really cool stuff. And then there's like the months where I'm like, oh my gosh, people are like gonna forget about me. Like I'm making half of what I made last month, like really riding that wave because I mean, it's literally like every month. It's like there's really not like a consistent baseline as an entrepreneur. Like this November, I made more than I did my entire day job my first year when I started working versus this month. I'm like, because I'm taking off a lot for Christmas and, just all of those things. A lot of it is choices. But I'm like, definitely going to make a fraction of what I made last month and really not letting that make me feel bad or this like desperation to like always be better than the last month, like really knowing, yes, we're going to have these like the wave is going to just be waving. And that just is part of the job. So that's been the other thing for me this year. Again, like having the really high highs and like really not getting down on myself when I don't have an amazing event that month that looks really cool to people, It's okay to reel it in and just have a normal month.
It's very refreshing to hear that because we see your highs and how incredible like all of these amazing things that you are achieving and accomplishing. And it's like, we all have the waves, right? Like this month was incredible and this month was lower. And oh, am I ever going to have an incredible month again? And it's just something that I think people need to hear. It's just part of it. It's just part of having a business. And the good thing about the wave is that even when you're down, you know that like the up is going to come back because it has, right?
Totally. Yeah, it does. And then also remembering I actually have to be proactive again about those highs, And, even like the cover of In Focus magazine, right? Like that was a really cool thing, right? I have been pitching them for a while about doing a story. Then they just like randomly reached out to me months later. Hey, I'm working on a story about sound healing, and my friend said you do stuff at Soho House. I should reach out to you. And I was like, do you not remember I've been emailing you about this? But okay. And then ended up doing that. They came over, did a photo shoot here. Then it ended up being the cover, which I had no idea was going to happen until someone DM'd me on Instagram. Oh my gosh, look at this. And I was like, whoa, that was amazing. But again, it like wasn't this that I definitely I made that happen through pitching and reaching out and all of that. Even the Soho House thing has been very great for me, like I said, but the it took me months to get them to get me to come in for the first one. And I started reaching out as soon as I found out one was opening in Nashville. Before it opened, I was like, hey, I know you guys are probably like really busy doing stuff, but do you want me to come do a sound bath? And they're like, oh, we're trying to construct the building.
Build a building.
They're like, we don't have floors right now, so no. So it just took a lot of me pushing and being persistent and like bordering annoying to get that gig happening. And now it's been the gift that keeps giving for me. So remembering that, yes, the lows are low maybe, but like in those low moments is when you can start, at least for me, what makes me feel better in those lower months is being proactive, because I do feel like that is an energy that I'm putting out there that people will receive somehow, even if it's not that thing, something else will come up, so I really encourage everyone to always be pushing. And that was the coolest thing that I learned from the PR job that I had. I was working with some really incredible clients, and I was pitching these famous people all the time, and people would say no to them and people would not reply. And I'm like, okay, well, if they don't want that person, then if I reach out and they don't reply, like I can't take it personally, right? It doesn't mean I'm not good enough. It doesn't mean they don't like me or whatever other story you can create around that. It just means like they don't need to work on a story about that right now. It's okay if they say no. It's pivot over here, try a different person, try a different angle, whatever. And that was a true gift from that job that I had, because that's how I've approached everything I've done, where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to reach out to him. Why not? And sometimes it's worked out. Sometimes people haven't gotten back. Sometimes they've said no. Like all of those things happen, but it's also created these other really cool opportunities at the same time. So yes, grateful for all of it.
So good. So we're going to wrap up, but where can people find more of what you do? What's one thing you've got going on right now that you want, people to know about? How can people find you?
I'm pretty active on my Instagram at Kayce Laine. You can also go to my website at kaycelaine.com. I don't know if you want to link it in the show notes, but that's where people can find out about my upcoming trainings. They can read more about my course. They can book me for sessions there, all of those things. I also sell crystal bowls. That's probably half of what I do, is working with people to buy the instruments, because it's such a personal process, as you know, Katie. And I have a big gig coming up at the Nashville Symphony, which also, by the way, was not handed to me. I had a friend who started working at the symphony a couple years ago. As soon as she started working there, I was like, yo, I want to do a sound bath there. I was like, can I just come there and do it for you and like your coworkers after work? Like, I don't care when, like maybe it's lunchtime for everyone. I don't care. And it was like for a long time. And then over the summer or in the spring, she reached out. She was like, by the way, they're booking this guy who kind of does a sound bath thing. I'm trying to get you involved so you can like partner with him. And I was like, great. And so that happened, and then that went really well. And then they were like, we want to do one with just you. And so now that's happening. And again, they didn't reach out to me. That wasn't handed to me. I had to make that one happen. And it took some time, but that's the thing. You really want to. The only one that has said no that I'm like, the planetarium. I'm like,
That
why
would
are we
be
not doing the
so
planetarium
cool.
No, I tried for years with them.
Can we get a petition going? I would sign up for that.
I know. I emailed them. I called them. I showed up. I tried really hard for that one, and that never happened. But I don't know. I'll try again. Like one day it will happen for me. I know it. But anyway, that's a side note. Yes, the Nashville Symphony on January 5th. That is a Sunday at 2:00 if you're in Nashville. It's gonna be a cool one. I'm gonna be singing. I'm gonna have my some backing tracks with some synth bass. So I'll have some assistants there as well, kind of making this an immersive situation so people will feel like in it. So very excited.
Love
So
that.
cool.
So cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Kayce. This has been so fun. So great to chat with
You
you.
guys, I loved all of this conversation, and it's making me even more excited for the summit in March.
We hope you loved that conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review this episode. We appreciate it so much, and we will see you next time.